City of Beaverton, this is Jahmai speaking. Hey, doing well, thank you. Yeah, I've got it open, and I have, yeah, it's recording currently, so just FYI when you get in, so, yes. Oh, good call, yeah, all right, yeah. Yeah.
Yes, well, we have the approval of the minutes, but I don't know if they were attached from last time, were they?
I didn't attach them. Hold on one second.
I
do need to let everyone know we're going to record this meeting. And if anyone doesn't want to be recorded, then this is your opportunity to escape. But since it's a public meeting, I just want to make sure everybody knows that we are recording.
All right, I appreciate that heads up. That's important.
Okay.
So we'll wait till next month to do the minutes, and we'll just do 2 in a row because there's no need to push that through now. So the first thing is just go around and see how everyone's doing. And I know we're all in different orders on different people's screens or roughly, so that may pose some challenges.
I'll get started.
Perfect. Just
so that way I could, kind of give us the format of what we'll do. So, Councilor Cate had come up with a great idea, Councilor Arnold, of us sharing something that has been tough and something that's been good. So what's been tough and what's been good. And so for me, I think the tough thing for me has really been I work. The VAC is I'd say maybe about 10% of what my job is. The other 90% is communications for the city, and so that's been a challenge because the past 4 months have just been unpredictable, to say the least. Lots of changes, so that's been tough, but it's also been good, I'd say. The good thing is, I've been able to spend time with family that I just wouldn't have been able to do, and I try to look at it as a gift of being able to, spend time with my son and my wife. And then also hearing some of the amazing stories about things that people are doing in the community have just been outstanding. And like, you guys are so privileged to be in this area, like, to have, there's people reaching out and sharing and helping one another in ways that, you couldn't imagine. And for all the things that we do see that might be pretty horrible, I would say that there's an equal amount, if not more so, of just kindness and love that the community shares. So I find that like a gift for my job.
So Jahmai, why don't you call on people and so that everyone's in the wrong order?
All right. Well, then in that case, I'll keep track of who did what. So I'm going to pass it to Wade, because in my screen you're to my right there. So.
Okay. What has been tough and what has been good? What's been the toughest thing is that my son in particular, has been in Japan this whole time, and it's been difficult not knowing how safe he is, not knowing what the community he's in and how well protected he is. I know what he does, but yeah, he does still have to get out some. So that's been kind of difficult. My daughter spent some time in Singapore because she was working from home. So she got invited to visit a friend in Singapore. That actually was good because Singapore was very shut down. So I felt more safe than when she was in Los Angeles, although she's back in Los Angeles now. So what's been good is our neighbors have been incredible. Just what Jahmai was saying is people really have been stepping up. We started a happy hour event in front of people's garages where we'd set up chairs 6 to 8 feet away from each other. And we've been having gatherings and getting to know people and helping people do shopping and stuff like that. So our neighborhood has just been rich with good spirit and helpful attitude.
Well, that's good. So you know what we didn't get a chance to do, Brian, I'm sorry, was introduce our newest member to the VAC. This is Jen's first official meeting. So welcome, Jen, and I'm gonna put you on the spot. I'm gonna ask you to unmute and maybe share a little bit about yourself, and then also what's been tough and what's been good.
Okay, well, thanks, Jahmai. So I live in South Beaverton. Our family moved up here 5.5 years ago from Southern California. And I have a husband whose name is Dave, and he is a therapist, and he works for an employee assistance program. We have 4 kids, all in the Beaverton School District this year, or they were all this year. And we have 2 dogs. We love it here. My parents are moving here. They already bought a house in the Cooper Mountain area, and they're moving here next month. I'm super excited. Yeah, so let's see. I teach online classes for a university in Michigan, and I was supposed to be in Malibu right now teaching a summer class for Pepperdine, but I'm teaching it online, and tomorrow's the last day. And I also do some writing and speaking and a little bit of consulting. I worked for the city for a while in the neighborhood program, so I got to sit close to Jahmai, and it was fantastic. I've been involved with the Central Beaverton NAC and South Beaverton NAC, and I'm really excited to be part of the VAC.
What do you teach?
I teach, let's see, for Pepperdine, I'm teaching the New Testament in context. For Rochester, I teach Intro to Christian Faith and Spiritual Formation and Theology of Ministry. So that's my background is in ministry and theology. So what's been hard is obviously like transitioning a class that was supposed to be an in-person class to a now online was a challenge. It was a lot of work. But I would say just overall, like dealing with the stress of all of this season and the unknown, and now the like Corona pounds that we're all dealing with, like, man, that sucks. And the good things would be like the ways that I am reconnecting, we're all, but I'm especially grateful for like these connections across the miles. Like I'm part of this Enneagram group where it's like a 3-month journey, like thinking about learning about the Enneagram, and it's a friend in California, but there's like somebody in St. Louis, a couple people in Texas, and we all know each other, but we all live in different places. So we're like doing this thing together that we never would have done if it wasn't for this. And then also just like being out, my husband and I are going for walks like every morning and every night. And we see so many neighbors out that never used to walk around the neighborhood. Because this isn't new for us, but like now we're seeing lots and lots of people out, and people are so much friendlier. I mean, people have always been friendly, but like we're actually talking to each other now. So, well, that sounds bad. Not that we didn't talk to each other before, but I just feel like people are really going out of their way to say hello.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Good. So I tell you what, how about we go with our next newest member, Gregory. And so you're old hat now. You've been here for 6 months almost. 6 months.
Yeah, right. Barely. A little bit of a break in between there, but I got to be honest with you, things have been going pretty great. I mean, despite a lot of the chaos in the world, I think going into this whole thing, I was more looking at silver lining than anything. And for those who don't know, I work for the Oregon Restaurant Lodging Association. So that's been quite a journey for me as far as what we've been dealing with in regards to the hospitality industry. So it's really allowed me to reach out into different areas and do a lot of different things within my job. And then also I do drone work, and that's been extremely busy too. So I've been really busy, which would lead me into the people that I'm around in my neighborhood. We're close with our neighbors. We have a couple like really close neighbor friends, and everybody's been working through this. So we're very grateful that everybody's been able to work. Everybody's remained healthy. And I think that's the most important things. But we've, you know, it's weird. There's a lot of things that are going on in the world, and I'm kind of just looking for the great things out of it, and how am I going to come out of this better, and that's really what I've been focused on to get myself through it. So we've been very lucky in that way. My wife is a marketing coordinator for Dentist Attendees, so she's been extremely busy, because if you know anything about businesses right now, they're shifting gears and changing a lot of things. So again, we've been really lucky and really blessed. We have a great spot in Beaverton, and we sit on the front lawn all the time, and I have horseshoes set up in the front lawn. So I've gotten really good at horseshoes. Yeah, we just feel really lucky, and all my family's safe back east. So I think those are the most important things right now. And then as far as things are being tough, I mean, they're probably just greedy things, you know, not being able to go to a concert right now. I missed a trip to LA, but everybody's, you know, we had this trip with some friends that I've known, my best friends I've known for 20 plus years, you know, and we missed that trip. But those are, for me, that's being a bit greedy right now, you know, so I'm not going to complain too much, but been good, been healthy, and been working a lot. So I'm very happy. And I'm happy to be back with this group as well. I can't wait to get back to work. And we kind of got started a little bit, but I'm excited to get moving again, because I'm sure there's some things we have to focus on. So I'm looking forward to it. So it's great to see everyone.
Good deal. All right. So Mandeep, I see you are on audio. Is that correct? Hey, Mandeep, are you there?
Can you hear me?
I think I hear you.
Okay, so I'm on the.
Oh, it's pretty quiet. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'll speak a little louder. So I has been very hectic today, so with work and everything, so I didn't get time to appropriately dress. And the hardest thing for me has been, you know, working from home as well as schooling my.
Mandeep, I can't hear you.
Is it better now?
That's a little bit better. Yeah.
Okay.
You're going to need to talk fairly loudly, or maybe you need to put your face near where the microphone is.
Okay. Sorry, the hardest thing for me has been working from home as well as schooling my 9-year-old at home. So can you hear me now, right?
Barely.
I can't hear him.
Mm-hmm. You did say working from home, so yeah. Mandeep, what we'll do, I'm gonna give you like a minute. We'll go to Meng, and then we'll go back to you, Mandeep. Does that work for you?
Sure, but if it doesn't work, I don't know what else I can do.
You can't turn up the volume anymore. It's all.
Okay.
I did it to the max. So.
Oh shoot.
Or the other option is, if you want to type your update in chat, that's something that works for us too.
Okay.
All right.
When you said okay, we could hear you.
Yeah.
Pretty clearly. So I mean, if you might have to like talk really loudly.
Okay. So can you hear better now?
A little bit
Yeah,
better.
a little better.
Yeah. So the biggest challenge has been to work from home as well as school my child at home. You know, keep him busy the whole day, working on something. So that's been the biggest challenge. But otherwise, it's been great working from home. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, working from home while teaching is that's a challenge for sure. So I think, except for maybe Wade and Jen Christy, but Wade, I don't know if you have kids in school anymore, but anyhow, I think Wade and Jen are probably the pros there. But let's go on to Meng. Meng, excited to hear what you have going on.
Hey, good to be back. See, what's been good is no traffic to fight. I
Amen.
work in nearby like Loy Center, and traveling from Beaverton, having to pass 26 all the time is definitely a challenge. So glad to save a lot of time there. Another good thing is that my company is also looking into having being able to work remotely in the future. So that's always a plus. And so hopefully that also means less traffic on the road in the future after COVID. Then what's bad or not so good, it's probably the back-to-back meetings. Like you don't really get a break, and you really have to put it on your calendar, or you'll just get an invite, whenever there's an opening. So I think that's probably the only thing, but rest of it, it's pretty good. You can't just like go out and go to a different state. You have to check out what's going on right now before you start traveling. But yeah, that's probably the biggest two issues that we're having. Thanks.
Sounds pretty good. I hope that the remote work will work for you. Everybody likes traveling. So my man Charlie, how's it going?
It's going pretty good. I guess I'll start off with the bad before I start off with the good. So I guess the bad for me, it's also my good in the sense that I've been working at home a lot. And the bad aspect of that, I don't mean to be a person that complains, but having that work-life separation is a little tough. It's like, oh, hey, I wake up, I'm at work. I'm still at home after I get off. So I guess that's probably one of the bad aspects of it. We just recently came back in the office. I work in Canby at a telecommunication company. So the good about that is that, there's no traffic. Kind of like Meng said, like for me, like my commute is usually like an hour. Now it's only down to like 35, which is pretty nice. And I would say also just with the pace of things of, being able to work at home and the flexibility of scheduling and saving time for driving, I get to spend more time with family and friends and stuff like that too. And also realizing there's a lot of things in the world that I just don't need. I don't need to go out to eat all the time, and I don't need to, go out to the movies and stuff like that. So just really valuing what I already have. So yeah, and it's good to be back to see you guys. So
Good. Yes. Now, Konnete. Spot there.
Oh, well, probably the hardest thing. Well, I have been having this kind of thinking about. I just retired from nursing not too long ago, and so to not be part of the hospital at this time, sometimes I'm kind of glad about that, but sometimes I wish I was there to help out. And so that's one of those things of feeling maybe some guiltiness about not being part of the healthcare right now. The other thing is probably just a separation from family. I turn 65 in November, so I know I have to be careful, but I have an 81-year-old mom at the coast living by herself. I have my daughter is working with at-risk families. I have a son that is in the restaurant business and home with his kids that I wish I could go see. And I have an uncle that's in a care center. So just worry about, I feel like my family kind of represents all of the vulnerabilities of our society right now. So I worry about them, but I'm really glad that we have the technology to stay in touch with each other. I miss the concerts too. We had really great concerts set up for this summer. My husband's a fiend about getting us tickets. And I think that some of what I've really enjoyed is, I don't know if you guys have noticed, but the air is cleaner. The smog's gone. When we have that Highland Woods in our neighborhood, there's bunnies up there. We see them on the path, and there's barn owls up there now and coyotes, and it's kind of nice. The plants and the flowers are amazing. So That's one of the things I'm really enjoying. I have a dog. We walk twice a day, whether I want to or not. And so we've been able to get to enjoy nature more.
Good. Speaking of nature, look at Brian. Your background looks looks pretty. So
It's yeah, Forest Park. Forest Park.
Ah, hey.
Yeah.
What's been going on?
In my office, we had different days. We're trying to do different backgrounds to keep things interesting or something. So here's where that's where I am today. But I think for me, frankly, my answers are mirroring yours. You know, the challenges of working from home, but the benefits of it as well. You know, being able to eat healthier lunches and things like that, as opposed to just, you know, nuts and berries out of my drawer or something. But then also, as you all know, with the work I do, it creates some real uncertainty with trials and juries and things like when things will go to trial, when they won't, and that's been kind of a headache. But frankly, I think the most important thing to happen recently, obviously separate from COVID, but with my job, the strength of BLM has been super important because we've started having discussions at very high levels in our office about change that's going to happen and real change. And frankly, it's because of the protests and because of the attention brought to it. And so of all the things going on, I think that's the most positive thing that I've seen in the last couple of months.
All right. So, Councilor Arnold, would you care to give us an update?
Yeah, I think the hardest thing for me has been my city council position. And it's partly because of the way I approach it. I didn't realize, my husband used to joke around that like I'd be out at meetings at night, leaving the kids at home, and my friends would call and say, was I there? And he would say, no, she's out saving the world. So I was always out doing things, but I was always fortunate enough to be doing things in places where I could be productive. And it wasn't as dangerous and as hard as this. So unfortunately now my brain keeps going, we gotta fix this, we gotta fix this, we gotta fix this. What should we be doing? How do we protect our community? What do we do? You know, and it makes me go like this. And then our electronic world is both a blessing. Could you imagine what it would be like right now if we didn't have the internet and all the programming that allowed us to, you know, send information, have online meetings? I mean, it's been amazing in one way, but in the other way, it's destroying. I'm now going to a physical therapist because what happened was, in those months, I don't go to the gym, so I'm not swimming or doing yoga. I'm constantly hunched over a screen for hours and hours and hours and hours, online meetings, tons more emails. And what it did is it started causing me to have issues where I'd have these like headaches that it's like lightning bolts going through my head. It's actually nerves in my neck. So it's like, but, you know, so I finally am going to a physical therapist and I'm starting to do the stuff I need to do. And basically he told me, you know, quit texting on your phone all the time and quit staring at screens. So I've been doing that some, but then it's hard because, again, this is the communication that we have. So those things have been hard. And to your point, Wade, my daughter is in India. She's on an assignment rotation there,
Oh my gosh.
working for a KPMG. She's living in a hotel. And so it's really hard because she's really, you know, closed in. And then, of course, you wonder how things will go. And mostly it's good, but she has said that she's had people that look at her because, you know, America's the worst country in the world for the COVID. And so when they see her and they know she looks American, they're, you know, nervous to be around her. So, you know, there's some of that stuff going on. But the good news is, on the flip side, because of this electronic existential world, I am meeting with my daughter and her best friend and her mom like every Friday night. We get together, we can talk. She's on the other side of the planet, and yet we can have instantaneous conversations, watch shows together. So, you know, that outreach, I'm talking to her a heck of a lot more than I did when she lived in Portland. So, you know, that's kind of good. And my kids are good. My oldest son, he works for Apple, and because of the virus, he was able to move from California back here. And so he's really happy as a clam to be here, and it's nice to have him nearby. So yeah, and to some of your points too, some of the outreach with people are just, you know, because we're looking at hard things and people, it's bringing out the care because we're concerned about one another and we reach out more. So that's the silver lining for me. And I'm hoping, to Brian's point, the Black Lives Matter and the police reform, that's tough too. We are definitely going to do our work, but it's kind of hard because we have people are like, well, just 8 can't wait. You just adopted. All you have to do, like, you can just change stuff. And you guys are probably, if you've been around, if you've looked at how government does stuff, it tends to be slow. And that's sometimes good because we have to be transparent and show everybody everything. That's part of it. And also it takes time, and we try to involve people in the community. And so it does take more time to do things. So just to let people know, we are really looking at it, and we will be doing changes. And again, I think there is a silver lining. This could be an amazing place to go to the next level of understanding our unconscious biases around race. So I'm hoping that we can have some really, positive, world-changing things come from that, starting with our own community. So, but those conversations, we have to figure out how to have what I call courageous conversations where we see, we can't be, the other thing that really bothers me, and I talked a little bit about this, I just did a council corner, it was my turn and it just went out, but what I see that people don't realize, another problem with this electronic existential world is our brains think it's like real. So when you're watching media and we have this confirmation bias. So, people, you're watching Fox News and they glorify the police and vilify protesters and they're selling trucks. That's how they're getting their money to, or you watch CNN, Reverse, and Priuses. And I'm not saying that any organization is good or bad, or that the news is good or bad. And that is part of the problem, that we go into this binary, things are good or bad. But really, in humanity, we're all on a spectrum. I mean, quantum is really what we are. So we really can make change, but we have to have conversations with people about what's really happening on the ground. That's the only way that we'll be able to make substantive changes that really help us as a community. So I'm really hoping that we can do that, and I'm going to be really encouraging it. But it's tough. So isn't it interesting? It's like the two edges, the two sides of things. So hopefully we can have some good things happen, but it's going to take some thoughtfulness, respect for one another, hearing people out, hearing what's really happening, and hopefully we can make some good changes. So that's kind of my world.
Well, it's good to hear from all of you about all of the challenges and the things you're doing. So I think the next thing, related note, is to go into the city updates on COVID. So I'll turn to Councilor Arnold and Jahmai again for that, but talking about the COVID-19 status of it locally especially, and then also what we're planning to do in the future here.
Yeah. Okay, there's a lot to say there. I've got a couple different categories. Jahmai, did you want to say anything?
Yeah, so
okay.
I will say the city's still currently in a state of emergency. So that began in March 13th, is that correct? I think.
Yeah. Well, that was the latest one.
Yeah, and so we're actually going to be updating that again, it looks like this Friday. So the 3rd is when that's, so it'll probably happen tomorrow now that I think about it. If it's, well, anyhow, by the end of this week, we'll be updating that again. We do that in 2-week increments.
Yeah.
And then also city buildings are going to be closed at least through July 19th. So the 19th of July, that's when that's going to happen. And a lot of that is kind of dependent upon, when we open. Like one thing that you guys, if you all came to the building right now, you would see how there's plexiglass everywhere. And, at the same time, we were fixing things from a flood that had happened. So it was kind of fortuitous that a lot of the areas were empty, so we could kind of shift things around to kind of make a lot of these transition to make the building a little bit more conducive to long-term health and safety. So the other thing is just kind of simple updates. The library is now back up and running in the sense of they have a library to go. So it's you can order things online. They drop it like right into the trunk of your car. And then you can drop off your stuff in the, if you have books that you've been holding on to, you can drop them in the slot, not the electronic one, but there's one kind of next to it, a manual one, because they have to wipe down like every single thing that comes through. So I think those are kind of the simple updates that I have as far as the city is concerned. But I know, Councilor Arnold, you probably have more of what the city has been doing.
Yeah, I can talk about that, and feel free to interrupt me anytime if you have any questions. So, because I'll feel free to take it. And there's a lot to say. Let me start first with just giving you a little bit about the effect financially for us. So far, it's looking like we've been really fortunate, and I'm going to give you guys a little bit of history. I don't know if you know this. We as a city, we were really lucky. Do you guys remember Measure 47? Back in the day, it was, scale back government. So it was, they put like they set the property values, they rolled them back and then set them, and you could only have at most a 3% increase per year. So regardless of what the property values are really doing, your assessed value is what you're taxed on. And when that happened, when Measure 47 passed, it was an initiative from the public, and it didn't go through any, good bureaucratic process. So what happened is it was not even implementable. They couldn't take that legislation and turn it into what they to rules to follow. And there was just no way. So it was like they couldn't figure out how to do it. And that's why the legislature got back together and they put ballot measure 50 in order to try to honor the ideas of that Measure 47, but create a way that was implementable. And what had happened was there were some funny things that happened. We got really lucky. Most cities, well, everyone except us, they got their tax base rolled back. But what had happened is we had a measure on the ballot at the same time to increase our property taxes for a police levy. It was called pennies for police, and it passed. So the legislature was looking at, okay, well, what do we do with Beaverton? Supposedly you want to roll it back, but at the same time they voted more money to pay more, so we didn't get a rollback. And our rate got established at a higher rate. So we have not ever hit the maximum rate or we haven't yet, of what we could actually charge for property taxes. So again, there were some jurisdictions, I mean, imagine you're running your home and all of a sudden now you've got 13 to 19% less money to run your house. That's what a lot of cities had to go through, and we didn't really have to do that. And that's continued to be fairly fortuitous for us, as well as when we're looking at our revenue sources and what we do. And I'm going to show you a little bit to give you an idea of our budget. Let me see. I'm going to see can I share the screen? I'm going to try to share the screen. Oh, host disabled participant screen sharing. Okay.
I think I can fix that. Hold on.
Okay. All right. Let me see if I can get into my.
And while we're pausing for that, I'll just note briefly that we're already a little bit behind in the agenda. And so with the goal of getting out of here about 8, if we could aim to have this topic covered by about 7:15, 7:20, that would be really helpful.
Yep.
If that's,
thanks for that, Brian.
Absolutely.
Yep. Good thing to say. And I'll keep that in mind. Let me see. Let me look at.
So I can't change it while I'm in the meeting.
Okay. I can just talk about it a bit then. I was going to just show you the effect of what our estimates of what's going to happen. And let me at least, oh shoot, where is that?
Do you mind if I give a quick list of some of the things that the city has done in regards to COVID response?
Yeah, I've got a whole bunch of them too.
Oh, cool. So
yeah.
I'll let, why don't you go ahead and
So I'll just talk a little bit about the funding. We looked at what we would, where we're likely to lose funding. Get back into this. Bring you guys back up here. And what we found is we assumed like next year we might have a 5% decrease in property taxes and about a 5% decrease in water and things like that. Bottom line is between all the different funds, it looks like a $7.3 million hit to our budgets through next year, which we spend. Our budget is like over 400 million now, but it's partly because we've got bonds and a bunch of stuff coming in. When you look at a budget, it doesn't just include what you're gonna get and spend, it also is your reserves, and there's a couple other things. So the numbers are really a lot higher. To give you an idea, we're actually spending probably, we'll know in November what this year was. The year before we spent about $167 million actually spent. So, and we're probably up around 200 now. So 7.3 million, that gives you an idea of how much. It's fairly small, but it's still hard because everything we do, once we're providing services, it's hard not to be able to provide them. So we are going to have to make some adjustments, but we don't have some of the problems that other cities do. There's some cities they're really hurting and they're already laying off people. We haven't laid anybody off. And so we've been lucky. And of course, we spent a lot of time moving staff and trying to figure out how to keep services going and getting all this online stuff going. And a few of the things that we've done, just to talk about, still as far as money, we are looking at spending about, we looked at like $2,657,000 worth of different types of relief. We have some money for phone and resources to help people with eviction moratorium stuff. We have emergency rent is a huge chunk for people. We've got $1 million we're thinking we'll be able to do. And then we did a severe weather shelter, which we spent money on for a while, but that's now over. We gave a little bit of money to Meals on Wheels, and then we have some unemployment benefit technical assistance. And for all of that, we've got, we're thinking like about 400,000 is going to come out of our general fund. And that's the fund that we can actually use to spend money on things like that. But we also have other pots of money that we already get from the government or that are coming now through CARES, through the state. So we're hoping that, a good chunk of that will actually be coming from other pots of money, either flowing from the state or the federal government. So we'll see. And we're getting some money through the county as well. So, and the other programs we did for small businesses, we have emergency business assistance, $1 million, business retention to help with marketing plans and financial plannings is about 300,000, and just a few other things. So about $1.5 million to help small businesses is the other piece. So those are the two that helping people and then our community members and helping small businesses for about $2.6 million. The other things we've done are things like, oh, hold on, where's my list? Hold on, okay. Let's see, we talked about eviction moratorium, and now we've blended. We had ours come out, and now we're blending with the state, and that makes more sense. It should look the same for. It seems like it should look. That's one of the things should look the same for everyone. So we're doing, that's in effect now. I think through September so far, September or October, and then they're saying it has to be paid back by March, but things continue to change. It may continue to extend. We've done like a couple of already business relief, two pots of $250,000 and more that we're doing as well. Some artist relief funding. And again, I talked about the unemployment hotline. And for people who are having issues paying their water bills, we're not shutting off water and we're helping rearrange payments for stuff like that. So those are the main, and the other thing we did, we started this program called Open Air Beaverton. And what it does is it allows private businesses to, like if they're restaurants or, customer things where they have customers coming in, like, anyways, different businesses, they have the option of setting them up in their parking lots. And if they do that, they can just do it. There's some rules they have to follow, but they can just do it. And we're also allowing some street parking to be allowed in Old Town and Beaverton Central. You can get a permit and you can put some, tables in the parking spaces. So, and we'll provide barriers, these, they're orange water barriers to block it off, to make a division between the parking space and the people, and then the street. We're also looking at, we were looking at allowing on first to maybe close off part of that street and allow them to have some like tarps and open air type things. But I don't know if that's going to go. We have to have 50% of the businesses say they're up for it. And so far we haven't found many businesses who want to use it yet. So I don't know if that's going to happen or not, but we'll see what comes of that open air Beaverton part. And that's kind of a summary of what we've done so far. What we're going to do, well, we'll see. I'm sure things will continue. I personally, we have our set of city priorities, which you didn't see. And again, in the short, and to keep time down, I won't go through them all. But we had met in the beginning of February with our council priorities for the year. And one of them was to work on neighborhood preparedness, encouraging our neighborhoods to do emergency preparedness. And then when COVID hit, we had a council meeting where we decided that COVID was our #1 priority. And how we phrased it was that the coronavirus response and recovery this year would be our #1 priority. And so I don't know how much of you know about emergency management, but they talk about different types of phases. And when something's actually going on, the first thing is the response, and that's the short term. What do you do to get through the event in the moment, right? That's kind of exceptional stuff. And then you have the longer term recovery of, okay, once we're, and this would be, once we're, probably starts once we're past the virus part and trying to deal with that. How do we recover? How do we bring businesses back up? How do we deal with the new changes and shifts with our community? Those types of things. And that's where I see, when I think of you guys, the Vision Action Committee, I think that your stuff would be more towards the recovery side, since you're more the long-term, the bigger vision people. But, that's open for discussion about if you guys have any thoughts of things you think that might be valuable as a group to be talking about and encouraging and or providing. So that's kind of that. Now I have like 5 minutes for questions if anyone has any questions.
All right. Well, thank you. That was helpful, and thank you for giving us the highlights too, helping us get back on track here. Because I want to spend a lot of time on this next topic. I think this should be an important bulk of the meeting. So as you all know, we have the charter change. And where that's going to be really important is in determining what the direction of this committee is going to be. Because the new chief executive for the city will end up being someone that the new council and mayor will hire through that process. And my understanding, and Jahmai and Councilor Arnold, correct me if I'm wrong, is that person will be dictating sort of the direction of how our committee, as well as many other committees and boards, will be working. And so I think my question to the two of you, and what would be great if we could focus on in terms of the restructuring of the city, is how is it going to affect our committee, and how should we expect changes going forward? What should we be doing now as we're anticipating? Because I remember originally in 2021, the idea was we go back out to the community. Is that still going to be the plan? Is that up in the air? What's next?
Yeah. Well, what I can tell you about is there's different parts to the charter update, but if we want to focus on the city manager part, unfortunately, I have a PowerPoint that I can send it to you guys afterwards. But let me just bring it up so I can talk about. We have a general layout of what we'll do. And for some of the newer members, I've talked about this with the VAC before, but basically what it is and why we have it is when you elect councilors and the mayor, we are responsible for setting the policies of the city, basically the plans of the city. So, you know, where we have goals as far as, you know, what to build or, you know, the overall projects. But then you have the execution of those plans. And that is where we again, we're spending probably $200 million. We've got 617 employees going up. So the execution of that, and most cities our size, and we are now going back to that model, is done through a professional city manager. So really their primary role is, well, there's two of them, but one is to execute the budget, our whatever, you know, our plans, our, you know, resolutions, other ordinances we pass, just different things that happen. The city manager is responsible for making sure that the departments are coordinated and actually execute the plans that the council has passed. But then, of course, it's not all, again, it's not a binary world. The city manager also tends to be involved with the council because, you know, it goes back and forth and there's overlap between, you know, pure policy and pure execution. So the city manager is also responsible for keeping in touch with us and, you know, talking about things, making recommendations about what we might want to consider as far as budget and policies, and kind of being an intermediary person to try to basically gather the will of the council, make sure we have the information we have to make good decisions, that kind of stuff.
Not to interrupt,
Yeah.
but how does that specifically affect
You.
this type of committee? I mean, I kind of understand the general stuff,
Right.
but
Yeah. I honestly, I'll have to see, but I don't really think it will. At the end of the day, you still have a council liaison. You guys, you're at the policy level of stuff, right? And so I don't really think that they would be involved with changing what you guys do.
So then for our purposes, in terms of thinking about upcoming meetings and what we want to be doing between now and the end of the calendar year,
Yeah.
should we still be preparing to do public outreach in 2021?
I think so. I mean, that would be a council decision. I don't know at this point. I've not heard any reason why and actually, didn't we say that we were going to move it to then and start it in 2021? Or was
Yeah,
that
it was-
always the plan? I thought it was.
Well, it was
Go ahead.
originally supposed to be 2020, but
Yeah.
then once
Okay.
there was going to be, I'm glad it wasn't 2020. I mean, like, yeah, see where
Everything we
right
would have
now.
done. Yeah.
But yeah, it was moved to 2021 in part because of it being an election year, census, and potential charter changes. You know, at the tail end, that kind of made the
Yeah.
decision for that.
Yeah.
And so
Right.
one of the things that I will mention is for sure that like the coordination of work that takes place for the community vision has been through the mayor's office, which would, that's a key change that I think administratively will take place, because we still don't know for certain what the division of responsibility will be as far as the mayor versus a city manager. And so for all intents and purposes, I do believe that we will be doing outreach in 2021. I would hate to see it be pushed another year. And I think that with coming out of a year of such rapid change, people, I think, Wade, you were the one that kind of put it in an email once, that like people are going to be really hungry to talk about what sorts of things they want the future to look like.
Yeah.
And so I think that it will be, there's going to be some logistics questions.
I would think that the focus of our focus of being visionary is not different. It's the question is what kinds of questions do we ask, and how do we touch people where they are? Because a lot of people are still going to be in the response mode, as Cate mentioned, but we want to try to push people to get to think beyond the response mode. And we need to, I would think, our purpose here and what we could actually start doing, whether we have specific direction or not, we have the general direction. And the general direction is we need to figure out how to go out and ask people And what kinds of questions are we going to ask people when we ask them to push beyond the response mode? And we can start doing that work. We don't need to wait for, or at least in my view, we don't need to wait for any specific direction or change to happen that will affect what we're going to do. That, I don't see any difference in that.
So are you saying that we might want to start it now rather than waiting for next year?
I don't know. Well, I think what Brian is talking about next year is where we actually physically go out and start talking to people.
Yeah.
What we can do now is start formulating the questions and start predicting what kinds of issues are people going to be asking us about. And then we formulate questions so that we are on point with them. And we also can start looking or talking to the people that we already have connections with in the community and ask them, okay, if we push you to think beyond your response and start thinking into recovery mode, what kind of questions would you like the city to be addressing? And I think we as a committee need to start formulating those questions that we're going to ask those people and then figure out how we're going to ask them. But the questions I think need to come first, and then the how can come a little bit later when we do get more direction from the city, if we do get any more.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
I don't know.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm not sure where this would fit into the bigger visioning process for 2021 that we're talking about, but I just think right now is a really interesting time to be asking questions of people, just like we kind of went around and did, like about what's working well or what's going, what's good. I think there's a lot of creative things happening right now, and it's a good time to discover those and to think creatively towards the future about what the future of our city might look like in light of this new world that we're living in,
Yeah.
So I think there's something that can be done while we're in the midst of it even, rather than retrospect later.
I agree. And I think that's really good to point out. People are kind of in a creative mode right now. And if we can direct them to push that creativity beyond what Cate called the response mode, I think we could get a lot of creative input throughout the community.
That's interesting that you're saying that. One thing that I've been thinking about, and I'm just now starting to kind of chip at it as far as try to see if I can get any support from the mayor and some of the other councilors, is when you looked at our priorities about disaster preparedness, readiness, neighborhood readiness. I mean, I'm thinking right now, we're in one of those emergency situations, right? And it seems to me like this would be a really valuable time to start having those neighborhood conversations where we start, encouraging people to come and we do exactly what part of what you're saying is ask those questions, what's going on, what's going for you, what's not, and getting a sense of where people are, not only for what they have to deal with now, but yeah, what we would want to look for in that recovery stage. So I don't know, I'm hoping that we can do that. We'll see. I've got a few thoughts about what that might look like, and we'll see where we get. But I think this would be an amazing time. And we can do it electronically. It's not as great as being in person, but it's still pretty strong. And given people's interest of what's really going on with this COVID, thing, and what we ought to be doing and what we ought to be thinking about, I think that would be a good starting point for having those neighborhood conversations.
That's sometimes how outreach and public opinion kind of surveys start. They start with an informal inquiry of broader topics and general things that we could do now, and then use that to kind of hone in and refine the questions that we do in 2021.
Yeah.
Which would be more qualitative, and this would be the more quantitative, and this would be the more qualitative. Free thinking kind of responses people have.
So I'm going to dig up and share with you. I don't want to get us too off topic, but I'll share just with you all. One of the things that, again, I mentioned that I work in city communications. So we had an informal survey that was done a little bit earlier on, I want to say in May, in regards to COVID-19. And at the time, you know, I think it would be great for this group in particular to take a look at what people had to say about just COVID-19 to kind of get an idea of like, hey, here's some public data, but then maybe thinking in terms of what questions you might want to pull for going from the response to the recovery aspect. You know, what sorts of things might this lead you to want to ask people, or and see what.
I think of it, I mean, I want to propose a different idea, and maybe it isn't different, I don't know, Jahmai, but in my work in special ed, I always was taught to start out in the future and then figure out where we want to be in the future and then start building the steps that will get us there. So I would think our purpose is not to go explore the data that is present, that is happening right now, because I think that will happen. We will end up getting that data. We will be asking those questions. I think we're the people that need to go out and start visioning what is the new normal going to look like, and start asking those questions. And when we start getting that information from the community, what they start seeing the city of Beaverton is going to look like, then we'll know what kind of data we need to collect. But I would rather start in the future and not in the present. That's
Well,
just, that's my
So I think there are a lot of really good ideas here that we need to explore. And what I would suggest, and unless anyone has opposition to it, is that next month's meeting, this should be the entirety of the agenda. We can fill an hour and a half talking about this, and we need to, especially that'll be our August meeting. That'll give us a couple months going forward to figure out how we implement what we decide to do out of it. I'll send out an email after this too, because I know a lot of folks aren't here. But I think if we can all take some time on our own over the next couple of weeks and then talking with the folks we know in the community about to figure out what we want to know from people in the community, first off, how we want to figure out how we want to go about getting that information, but then also thinking about what sort of things might people not be talking about unless we push them to, that the city needs to know. And so not only what do we want from them, but what things are going to be hard to get from them, and how can we think about getting that information? Because that can and should take an entire meeting to sort of suss out. And I have a feeling that a number of us are going to have varying ideas, and taking the time to get all those out there. And it's too bad we can't do this in person, because it'd be great to have a whiteboard or something. I think what we might do next time is if we enable the screen share. Oh, we've got a whiteboard behind Jahmai. But if we enable a screen share, then either I or Konnete or Jahmai or somebody can start putting up these ideas, so that we can all have them in front of us as we talk. And then even if we don't arrive at a definite conclusion by the end of next meeting, have things pared down to a few ideas and a few methods that then we can put toward Jahmai and say, so what can city staff help us with? Of these things, what's feasible to do? And if folks are interested in doing that, that's what I'd like to do for next month's meeting. Okay, I see some nods and thumbs up, and I don't see anyone shaking their head or looking upset. So then why don't we plan to do that, and not to cut off what we're talking about here, because a change in government is pretty important, but maybe cover a couple of more things if, you know, Councilor Arnold or Jahmai, you have a couple of things you want to touch on that we haven't yet, or if they're important questions from other folks. But then our last topic of the night is BLM and what's happening here with that, and that's also important to discuss. So I want to save the appropriate amount of time for that. But I think if we spend another if we're done with this topic by, you know, 7:35, 7:40, then we should be on track still to get out of here by 8.
Okay, and I'll just tell you just a little bit more about the city manager part of the charter update. We've got a tentative schedule that we're going to follow. We're going to end up hiring an interim city manager that will start in the beginning of January in order to allow, all the elections and the new council to be going, and also just the time of the year in the middle of this pandemic, it just seems like a better time to start looking at who the permanent city manager would be. So we've got an outline. Again, that was part of what I had, but there's work all the way. There's stuff, you know, defining what we're looking for and all kinds of stuff along the way, but we're tentatively looking at a process that's starting now and bringing in an interim manager in January, and most likely hiring the permanent city manager in the spring, or, you know, towards the end of spring is when that will probably be.
Do you know if there's a plan for process in that regard? Is there a plan to have public input, or is it largely going to be away from public input that they're hiring?
Oh yeah, no. We will yeah, that's part of it. If I could show you the points, that's part of it too, is figuring out what that's going to look like and how we would do that. So that is part of the work that's going to be happening between now and January. Yeah.
Thank you. So does anyone have any other questions or anything on top of their heads about the change in the government charter change, things like that, before we move on?
I haven't heard yet how the change in the chart. I know that we're going to have another council seat, and the mayor will become a councilor. I know the mayor is not going to be a strong mayor position anymore, but how does the city council as a whole change? Like, how is its authority changed or its role changed with a new city manager?
Our role, in my mind, it doesn't change, but what we've done, just to give you a little bit about the dynamics, in our old form of government, which was, we ended up with it in 1980, and it was something that we had some citizens back in the mid 70s who didn't, anyways, they got it on the charter, on the ballot to change the charter, to take the power of the city manager and give it all to the mayor. And so that's why we have the form we have. And so when we looked at, and part of it too was, you have the mayor, and we've been lucky. Honestly, our mayors have had the best, at least the ones that I've known of, the last three at least, have had the cities at their, you know, they're concerned about their city, not their own stuff. There's a lot of stuff that the mayor can do that no one would see. So that's one of the things that we're also bringing is more, you know, transparency into some of what happens. But wait, why was I saying this? What was your question again? Was
about how the role of the
council.
Right. So what happened was, we had, when they set it up, they had the mayor only votes in the case of a tie, and then they had 5 councilors. And what that did is it meant that the mayor almost never votes. And people thought, well, but the funny thing about that is that actually ends up being an advantage to the mayor, because if you look at what the council does, most of what we do, it's you know, everyone agrees with it. We have some 4-1 votes, that's this much, and this much, just 1 or 2 a year maybe, are votes that are 3-2, where the mayor's vote, if it was 6 councilors, and that last councilor voted to make it a tie, and the way that last councilor voted was the way that the mayor wanted it, that's the only time the mayor's decision would ever make a difference. So in the meantime, what they don't have to do is share with the public how they really feel about things. They don't have to show the vote. So the biggest change, it doesn't give the mayor more power, it gives the mayor more transparency so that the public can see how the mayor votes on things. So that's why we increased the council to be 6 with the mayor. So again, you go back to having an odd number of people. And then the way that works is, you know, as if it's a tie vote, it doesn't pass, but, you know, more often than not, it would not be a tie vote. So you'd have to have someone either abstaining or not voting, and that kind of thing. So the big change for the mayor is to have to vote, and also for us to be more involved, because the city councilor, the city manager is that middleman, and they have the responsibility of reporting to us. So we have more insight into what's going on with the city. And again, there's accountability. The mayor, right now, the mayor just answers to the public, or unfortunately mayors, and part of the problem with the strong mayor form is they tend to answer to the special interests who give them money, right? So that goes away because you have a city manager who doesn't answer to that, and the city manager has to keep us informed about what's going on, and being answerable to us, they need to consider what we think is important as well. So it gives us more say in the matter. Technically it doesn't change our role, but functionally it provides us with more information and more say in what we want to see in policy. And yeah, so that's kind of the big changes that I see. Does that make sense? Is that, yeah.
Okay.
But at the same time, there are problems that can arise with a city manager if that's the person that is responsible for contracting and that sort of thing. Wouldn't that?
Oh, right. You can still, I mean, there ain't no perfect world. Again, we're not binary, you know, there are people, and there can be that can be a problem. If you have a city manager that's trying to hide information from the council and playing around with contracts, that's a problem. But the difference is if it comes up, there's recourse. One is if we hear about it, they're going to be in trouble. The second is if they really do something that's corrupt, like give a contract because they get some kickbacks for it. There's an organization called the ICMA that it's kind of like in a way it's like your board, the law board, where if they hear complaints, they investigate, and all they have to, if they see that there was behavior that looks like it wasn't on the up and up, they will they can censure or reprimand or something like that city manager, and then that goes on their record. So what happens is it's pretty hard to get another job if you've got something where you got caught doing something you shouldn't have been doing. So it actually adds a lot more accountability. So yeah, you have the same problem with the city manager could do something like the mayor under the scenes and that's self-interest, but the likelihood of it showing up is much higher. And again, the big thing is you don't have people giving that city manager money and wanting action from the city manager, where we do have that to a certain degree with a mayor. Does that make sense? So I guess I just see a lot more oversight in that one. Yeah.
Okay, so next, our final topic for the night, obviously we have a roundtable at the end, but I expect that it'll be pretty short given that we sort of had a roundtable at the beginning, is talk about BLM. And I think one way that our committee can be helpful, and Jahmai and Councilor Arnold let me know too, because I'm getting this agenda sort of today too. So I'm not entirely sure what your intent was with some of this, but I think part of the visioning committee is to be responsive to the city and say, and let them know what we see happening and also what changes we think should be made too, and what we're hearing, be that middle person between the city and the public in both directions. And we have those action items. That's perfect. Excellent. So I'll let the two of you take that away then. Thanks.
Well, do we want to start? I mean, I could say a little bit. I'm welcome to hear what you guys think first. That might inform me as to what would be the most valuable part. I mean, this is a big issue.
It's really big, and I think what might be great to start it off with, and I see Jahmai has the vision in front of him, so maybe he can do that, is to do a direct tie into where some of our action items connect into the various issues BLM is talking about. And that can sort of frame our discussion going forward, keep it from being too, because obviously this could go so many directions. Try to keep it a bit focused.
Yeah.
Yes. So I will just get into the current community vision plan. So this is, again, I'll speak directly to the policing aspect of it and also the welcoming aspect of it. So just a couple of, we have an entire section in building a friendly and welcoming community. So that's one of the general goal areas. We do talk a little bit about so for example, when it comes to equitable practices, goal number 4 is increase city's workforce diversity. And so that's making sure that the people who work for the city reflect the demographics within the city, and that includes police. And when it comes to police, there are plenty of actions because Beaverton Police Department being one of the vision partners, I will read just a couple of those real quick. Number 16, reduce crime through patrols and education. There's enhanced police and court facilities, which is something that just recently happened. Supporting proactive criminal justice initiatives. So looking at like addressing root cause behavior. Identifying ways to strengthen police community interactions. That's another one. There's a big one is number 20, providing cultural agility, awareness and competency training for police. And then there's a couple others like number 23, increase public involvement in emergency planning, which it's more so about like our emergency management, but Beaverton Police being again a part of that, like how having public involvement in kind of the general planning of like how police will respond to certain issues. So those were the big ones that I kind of pointed or pulled out that directly, I would say, touch on some of the things that that council has been hearing about. So because I know that you've been out in the community and also had some council meetings. So
where did that come from, Jahmai?
Oh, that came from the community vision plan. And so those were the section, if you want, for the sake of minutes, probably want to mention the primary goal areas are public services and also build community.
So one of my questions for the two of you is, obviously we're having a lot of discussions about a lot of different types of change right now, and that affects different folks within the city. Obviously the police department, also, you know, the city attorney's office, and I'd imagine HR people as well with your negotiating contracts, things like that. Are folks in the city pretty receptive to change, or how do you feel different ideas are being received by the various departments they touch?
It's interesting. We've already had some work going that it's been spurred along. So for instance, we just got a draft. If you guys are interested in the detail of it, it's from our HR department that's looking at our diversity, equity, and inclusion components for our city as far as hire. I think it's for hiring, isn't it? Yeah. So we could send that out to you, but they're redrafting right now. And they're in the middle of redrafting that, and that will speak to what we're trying to do as far as, you know, in our hiring and internal practices. But I can get that information to you guys if you want to see it. It's fairly detailed, but not too long, but pretty detailed. But would that be something you'd like to see?
Go ahead.
I'll include the entire diversity, equity, and inclusion plan that our city's cultural inclusion team has worked with the Diversity Advisory Board to create. So that does
That's
have
another
some
one.
components
Another
for,
piece. Yeah.
for all different departments of the city. I don't think that there's a single area of the city that isn't touched by it.
It strikes me that that kind of information would be something that we, from the perspective of where we stand right now as the visioning people, we don't know if we need that information. I mean, that may be, we may need to go back and look at that information after we figure out what we're trying to look at in the future to happen in our community. But it feels like that, the way you describe that data felt like more things that are currently happening rather than the direction where we're going.
Yeah. The
HR. I know there's a crossover there. I know that's
Yeah.
not a black and white line, but
Yeah.
that's just my reaction to how you describe that piece.
So are you concerned that if we give too much information about here's what we're already doing, that it'll skew what we're open to hearing?
My concern is that we spend a lot of time investigating the present when what our purpose is to go beyond the present and start figuring out where we want, how we figure out what the community wants in the future. And we already have spent a year listening to housing reports and transportation reports and various other kinds of things that are happening in the city to give us background knowledge. I feel like we need to start moving. That's just my feeling about it.
Okay.
Well, you know, the police Captain Oates came to our last NAC and presented on their addressing the 8 can't wait criteria, and they have that up on their website. And they have said that they have compared it with their existing policies to see where they're at with it and what they need to do in the future, which sounds a little bit more like what Jared just did in Wade. And that might be something we should find out more about.
Did the police department sound open to making certain changes, or what was your feeling from the meeting?
They felt that in certain areas they already were representing those tenants, but that they had some areas that they needed improvement in. I think, you know, there's other questions like what kinds of active education and certification and that sort of a thing might still give us some opportunities.
I guess what I'm trying to identify is that that piece of information, we would want to take that and say, where is that leading? What do you visualize as the end result once this has been successfully implemented? And I personally, and this is my belief, and persuade me otherwise if I'm wrong, but our purpose as a visioning committee is to get beyond what is currently happening. It's to start posing questions of where people are going with those interesting and effective programs that are implementing. What is the long-term vision?
And Wade, I appreciate that comment, and I think that's something that's important, and that's something that, especially as we're getting into now, and our progress has been stymied by not having a meeting for the last several months, obviously, and next meeting, we're really going to be getting into what do we want to know and how we can do this. But the only way to understand where you're going to go or what you want to know is to know what's happening now.
On the ground.
You have to understand.
Contend that statement.
Well, if you don't know where you're at,
way to know.
If you don't know where you're at, you can't say where you're going or where you come from. And so I think it's important. I think it's important information to understand who's open to what sorts of change and what change they're not open to, because then you know what you have to push on and what you don't. It helps you formulate the way you're going to ask these sorts of questions. And so I think these are bits of information that are going to be important for us to have as we're thinking about what we want to ask people. Because if Beaverton Police is saying, here's what we're already doing, then that's something I want to ask people about to say, do you actually see them doing that? Do you agree that's something they're already doing and doing well? And if Beaverton Police is saying that's something that we're not doing what we want to improve on, then I want to ask the community, how can they improve on this? They recognize as a way for them to improve. What are you seeing that they need to do differently to make it work? Because obviously they aren't doing it on their own, even though they recognize it as an issue. And so those are things I want the answer to, not just in terms of police, but in terms of housing, transportation, and these other areas, because that helps me formulate from a concrete position what we need to be asking people about to figure out what's going on.
And I think we have to have those courageous conversations where people can come and we show respect to one another, but we look at what's happening on the ground and what it looks like to everybody. I mean, that's the way I think we can get to somewhere else. I don't think we can go very far away. And it's really easy to get, if you don't understand the details, at times it can make the conversation go off. So for instance, go ahead.
Well, it's that staying in the problem for longer than it feels comfortable. I think when something has this kind of emotion to it, you want to get through it very quickly. But in doing that, you miss the opportunity to really kind of stay in the problem, understand the problem to the degree where you will get the better solutions.
Right. Yeah.
And I saw that Greg took himself off mute, but hasn't jumped in. I just want to make sure that you don't have a comment you're trying to get in edgewise as we all talk across each other here.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I had several comments come and go through my head right now, but I keep just listening. I mean, I think there's a little bit of truth to both. You know, I agree with what Wade's saying. I agree with what Brian's saying. I also, you know, based on what Jahmai said, you know, I think what we need to start looking at from a future perspective, as far as what we're doing with public safety, needs to be, you know, I keep hearing these things that additionally what the police need to be doing, what the police need to be doing, what the police need to be doing. Well, all that's doing is compiling more things for the police to do. What we need to do is subtract things for the police to do and put that in a different division area and say, we need this, we need a group to do this, because the police can't handle that. okay, now we need this group over here because we need to take that off their plate as well, because there's a built up stress level for these officers, and mixed with some things that maybe they do need to change,
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's kind of my point on things, and some of the things that were stated, even though they're current, already seem outdated, so that's like, it was like, when we were reading it, I was like, that already seems like 3 years ago or whatever, so those are my thoughts on it. That's so I agree with a bit of everybody.
I definitely will say, from a historical perspective, with the 2016 plan, it was interesting because going to Wade's point of forget about the now, let's look at the future. And when we are having those conversations, they are entirely future centric, right? A lot of those things were brought up. People had mentioned that they want, like there wasn't really like as defined a point on, for example, like cultural agility with police. I think it was, people were talking about safety and having people in their neighborhood that, that they could look at for as like, public safety was sort of the thing. It wasn't necessarily tied to police, but at the time we had to work with at that model that we were in, the idea of like which partners are going to take this on. And there wasn't really that kind of discussion of like looking outside of where our heads were at the time. And so it was interesting seeing that, the police are like, well, we have this community services division and we are looking at training, and, all of the people that were invited to have the discussion, nonprofits and other, businesses and all that stuff. That was kind of the framing of like, okay, we'll take this on, sort of thing. And so it is interesting to see, I love the idea that Wade's talking about like, let's completely forget about where we're at now and think in the future. But then part of that is tied to what resources are available to get us to that next point.
And also the understanding of the reality of what's on the ground. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
To clarify my point, I am not saying forget about now. I am saying we have a lot of now already in front of us. It's a time management issue. We only have 7 meetings left until 2021. And if we spend our time keep rehashing the new stuff that everybody is currently working on, then we're not going to do our job, which is to go beyond that. So it's a time management issue, not a philosophical issue.
Gotcha.
Of the information. So it's getting the relevant information that we need to understand in order to look to the future, and not spending all the time looking at the detail of everything.
Exactly. Yes, it's like what Konnete said, we need to have the courage to ask the tough questions and go beyond what the other people are currently doing. It's going to be hard. This is not going to be an easy thing, but we could really spin for a long time rehashing what other agencies are already doing.
Yeah, that's true. And we do have issues too. Part of a little bit of what's going on is, as we've talked about, sometimes people that come speak to us, they don't really know what it looks like on the ground, and they don't understand that we don't just snap our fingers and update all our police policies. And just as a really interesting thing, I started looking into the A Can't Wait, and it seemed like one of the really hot buttons was the chokehold issue. So I found out more about that, and it's really pretty fascinating, because if you listen to what we were talking about when we had the work session with the chief, she talked that we do not teach chokeholds, but that we allow them. And for people that allow them if needed. And for people that sounds weird, and it's like, well, wouldn't you teach someone how to do it well? But here's the history of chokeholds. in the past, police officers, they weren't taught to choke people. They were taught to push on the carotid artery in the case of a violent situation, because if they push on the carotid artery, it makes the person faint. So it was a fast, simple, non-violent way to deal with someone who's being aggressive, right? But what happened is, even though they're teaching everyone how to do it, it was going wrong way too often. You know, and they realized we can't teach this anymore. So they don't teach anything like that anymore. And the only time, if you were to talk to a police officer, a good one, I mean, we do have bad actors. There's 549,000 police officers in the United States. And I can assure you there are some that are bullies and racists and think they can do whatever the hell they want. And maybe they're in places they can. But I think that from what I've seen of most police, most of them, you know, they don't want violence, and they don't get any great aha out of smacking somebody. And you know, part of it, like our TV shows, CSI and all that, where the team goes out and they go kill the bad guy and hey, a good job's work done. That's not how it works. If someone actually has to shoot someone, they're put on time off, they go through counseling. You don't shoot people and not have it have traumatic effects on people, right? So we have sometimes these odd ideas of what's going on, and it's that we really do have to understand what it actually looks like on the ground, especially if it's about things that we don't really see in our lives accurately.
One thing I'd like to note, stemming off of that as we talk about police reform, is that oftentimes the danger is not what we see, but what we don't. I think there are some very highly visible incidents like the ones that precipitated the recent BLM with Breonna Taylor and everybody else. But where we need the most reform and where we need to pay the most attention is the places we don't see. Because that's where there's the greatest capacity for problems. And the other thing I'll note on that is that it's sort of like, I like to compare it to the way we've changed our thinking around drugs, in that, so I was, you know, went to elementary school in the 90s, right? So I had DARE. And DARE taught you there was this guy around the corner with this trench coat, and he was the one who's going to sell you drugs, and it wasn't your buddy, it wasn't that nice guy, that was the guy, and you got to watch out for that guy in the trench coat. But as we all know, that's ridiculous, right? You get drugs from the people who you associate with, and obviously drugs is a whole host of things, but you know, let's even say hard stuff, heroin and meth, things like that. You're still not getting that from the guy around the corner. You're getting that from the people you associate with, from your aunts and uncles and other folks like that. And it's similar to when it comes to talking about police reform, in that, as you all know, and Jen, I don't know if I mentioned this when we talked before, so I work as a DA in Clackamas County, and so I interact with police officers all the time, and I've never met a police officer where I said to myself, man, they're a jerk. You know, and I've never met a police officer where I was like, this guy seems awful, like a real racist, you know. And I've met tons of them, but that doesn't mean they don't do those things. And that doesn't mean that there are issues in their training. That doesn't mean that some of them at some point overlook things or overemphasize other things when they're out there and no one's looking. And I think that's what we need to be careful about, because that's the most dangerous stuff. The person who's obvious we can deal with, but it's the issues with the system and the issues with the training that take the people who we otherwise would think is the person who will give you their shirt off their back and puts them in a situation where they don't behave that way. And
that's where we need to see what happens on the ground. And to Konnete's point about having the conversations about those, you know, the problems, the really sitting in the problem and being able to see it. Because you're right. And I read a really fascinating book. I don't know if you guys have heard of the book White Fragility. That was a pretty an eye-opener for me, but it talks about how, to Brian's point, how a lot of people, we are in privileged places, and we even as, you know, as people, we don't think of ourselves as racist, but yet we do have preconceived ideas that we culturally grew up with that we don't even know. And it was really the recognition that we need to take a harder look at how we're responding to people, not just assuming since we're not a member of the KKK, we're not a racist, right? And I mean, that's what I hear you saying, Brian, and you're right, there is bias, and even in good people that don't see they have it. So how do we have those things to unearth them? And to Konnete's point about you know, having those conversations about the problems. And I hope we can create a way to do that in our city. That's what I'm really pushing for. I'm hoping that we'll do something like have some kind of a board that's looking at things going forward. So if we hear complaints, or we can look at what's going on and maybe look at training for better training. But yeah, that we have a way to see things as they happen, and then have those hard conversations and get the ahas of, you know, wow, you know, we really do need to change how we're doing this. This is biased.
So it sounds like in our next meeting, we as a committee need to spend some time redefining who we are and how we fit in light of all these other committees that are implementing changes. What is unique about us as a visioning committee? I think that's an important question for us to talk about.
And Wade, in our upcoming meeting, this is one I think where you can shine real bright. Because the subject for our next meeting is a lot of the stuff you've been talking about. I've been chomping at the bit for the last several months. And so I mean that sincerely and as a compliment, not as a joke. I want to be clear about that. And I want you and everyone else on the board to take some time and think about these questions before we come together, so we can have something really productive. And I think I'll talk with Jahmai, but we'll make sure we get the screen share set up so we can have some sort of joint note thing that we can all look at the same time. But with that, we're butting up on 8 o'clock, so I want to be respectful of people's time. Before we go to around the round robin, I guess, does anyone have anything else, any final comments or things they really wanted to touch on, or have questions for Jahmai or Councilor Arnold before we wrap up here? Okay, I don't see anything. So we'll do the roundtable. Jen, just so you know, what we tend to do at the end of these meetings is a lot of folks are involved in a number of groups and activities outside of here. And so if you have something from one of those groups or activities that you think people on the board would be particularly interested in, you want to share, invite them to, things like that, now's a great time to just share that. I don't have anything to suggest this time, so I'll get us started. Say I don't have anything, but it's great to see you all. And I'm really looking forward to our next meeting where we can get into the substance of what it is we actually do. So thank you all. And then I'll just call people out around my screen in the order they come to make it easy. So Konnete, you're next. Do you have anything for the board?
Oh, just real quick, the HOP, which is the Housing Committee, is starting up again, and I was on that. And so I'll report back to you when that gets going. And let's see, I went to the public safety tour today, actually. They're planning to open up the building on August 15th. It's very scaled down but spacious, and they haven't had, my sense is they haven't had a lot of public people come in there. So if you guys can have the time to look at their online registration and have a chance to go, I advise it. Cate, you went. So they are, that opening is being pushed out till August 15th. And then I'm with the Highland Neighborhood Association, and we're trying very hard to get some of our neighborhood events for this summer going in light of the COVID. We will be having a weeding party in conjunction with one of our HOAs that is within our district. And we will probably be doing the dumpster event in a novel way, as the schools aren't able to help us out with a venue this year. That's where I'm at. Thank you.
And then Wade, you're next on my list.
I'm really excited about the discussion that we're going to have at the next meeting. And I really appreciate all of you to be available for this discussion. On a personal note, my book will be coming out in the fall, I believe. So it's looking very good.
Excellent. Councilor Arnold, I have you next. If you have anything to share that you haven't already.
I've talked so much.
All right.
The one last thing I didn't tell you, though, the end of the chokehold and why they still allow it is that the idea is you're not training in it, but I mean, if you're in a place where it's life or death for you, where you're stopping violence. So I mean, if someone's choking you, you know, is on top of you choking you, and you can't choke them because that you either get fired or try to save yourself. Those are the places, I mean, again, where they would say it's okay to do it. And again, it's a tough issue, but that's where some of these go. So having those hard discussions, and I think it is the higher level of what Brian was talking about, the stuff that we don't even see that we have that we need to identify. Yeah.
Jen?
Yeah, I have a lot of things to say about Black Lives Matter, but I don't have anything for this roundtable.
All right. Meng? Meng, I think you're muted.
So I'm with the Taiwanese community here, and as you all know, Taiwanese make a lot of masks, and so currently we're working with a lot of organizations in different areas to get masks from Taiwan to support the community here. So that was an interesting project that we're currently doing.
That's
Great.
cool.
Greg?
Sorry, I was trying to get a link in there. So I have a quick thing. I'm with Jen. I do have a lot to say about BLM, but we don't have that much time. So, but what I did want to mention was my friend Razier, who is the director of TV Creates, is having, there's going to be a creative industry network a Zoom call on July 15th. So I'm going to put that link in the chat here. Oh, I just did. Okay. So it's in the chat, and that's just basically for those who are in the creative field to connect, network during this time, come up with ideas, where we go next from here, sort of stuff. So I'll be jumping on to add any insights I might have from my perspective from the hospitality industry and some of the things I can add. But yeah, join us for that if you guys are into creative, and pass it along.
Charlie?
I don't really have anything to add for the group. Aside from it's good to see you guys, and I hope everybody stays safe, and I look forward to our meeting next month.
Great. Mandeep? If you're still with us and can hear it? I don't hear anything coming from, it looks like he's still, Mandeep, you're still muted if you're talking. Well, anyway, well, I guess we'll wrap up with Jahmai then, unless Mandeep pops on.
Yeah. So let's see. Yeah, well, you guys all covered. But two short things. One, I sent just in the chat. There's an associate judge that. Oh, see you later. See you later, Greg. Yeah, but there's an associate judge position, and we're having kind of like a, I don't know, like a get to know potential associate judges. And so some of the boards and commissions have been asked to join in. The flyer's there. It's on the 7th. This time escapes me, but if you are able to, it's just a Zoom call, I think, or a Teams call. You get on and just get to know, ask a couple questions, especially in light of, some of the things that we were talking about tonight. And then the other thing is, I know that there's probably some like reading and discussion points that maybe you all didn't get a chance to bring up. I will encourage to just go ahead and send either Brian, Konnete, or myself an email with those kind of some of the points, or maybe articles or anything like that you wanted to share. And we'll compile those and send that out to everyone just as a separate email, so that way if anyone had, oh, you know what, here's kind of a thing that I read that was really cool that I thought was relevant. I think that might be a good opportunity for us to just see what else everybody else has been learning during COVID. So, all right. And that's all I got.
All right. Well, I think that's it then. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Look forward to seeing you next month, and we'll get an email out to you hopefully a week or two in advance of that with a rough agenda and everything.
Great.
Brian, will this be posted on YouTube then? Or where?
This meeting? No, I think the city has it on their website.
Just on their website?
Yeah. I will have a recording of it if you want to get a copy of the
That'd be
recording.
helpful.
I'll check to see what I could, you know, like how I get that, because it's gonna be saved on the cloud somewhere. But if you need it, I'll have it.
I need it.
Oh yeah, for minutes. That's
Oh,
right.
for minutes.
Okay.
Right. Okay, we'll talk later.
All right. Thank you all very much.
Hey,
Bye.
Jen, is that your son?
Hi, everyone.
Jen, is that your son?
Hmm.
What's your name? What's
Well,
his-
I've got my AirPods in. He can't hear
Oh,
you,
he
but
can't
this is
hear me. Oh.
no, this is Lane. He just
Lane.
finished kindergarten.
Aw,
Yeah.
so cute.
Have fun camping, also, Brian
What's
and
that?
everyone.
Oh, thank you. All right. See you all later.
Bye.
Take care.